In 2015, the Filling the Pool research study by the Committee for Perth was world-leading. It found that despite being 51% of the population base, WA had the highest gender pay gap and the lowest number of female board chairs, directors and CEOs in the country. Board recruiters, male board chairs and CEOs were decrying that Perth just didn't have enough talented women to appoint to board or senior executive positions. Yet women were reporting they weren't being given the opportunities. Filling the Pool set out to understand why Perth's women were not getting ahead in corporate life and made recommendations to address the systemic issues.
Well, the Committee for Perth set out to put down an evidence base about what were the problems for Perth women getting ahead, because it would have been very easy to hide in the national data, so this is very much a specific project for Perth. And the recommendations roadmap was a very sensible approach to making change, and real change has happened.
What the researchers found was that the reasons for the lack of progress were both cultural and structural, including Perth had out-of-date ideas about the roles of men and women in society. Perth's corporate culture was perceived to be more masculine, and networks were also reported to be masculine, strong and tight. Women were lacking in self-confidence. Women didn't know the appropriate way to behave in the workplace because they were criticised as being too masculine or weak, unable to make the tough decisions. There are male domains and female domains of work, with negative attitudes towards women working in industries related to science, technology, maths, and particularly engineering. Role models, sponsors and mentors are important for women's progression. Discrimination, both direct and indirect, despite being unlawful, was rife.
One of the fun pieces in the research was that if we have the rates of change that we've currently got, it's going to take 300 years to get to parity for CEOs, and that is just outrageous.
There is an emphasis on mothering rather than parenting, with two of the greatest contributors to women leaving the workforce or failing to progress identified as a lack of childcare structures and/or a lack of workplace flexibility.
It was a bit like dropping a bomb, and I think it was the degree of complexity that really took them by surprise. It's almost like a bowl of spaghetti. You can be picking up one strand but having ramifications in other parts of the business. So recruiting processes have changed, promotional processes have changed, just the fundamental ways in which women can actually keep a career as well as having caring responsibility, I think has profoundly changed.
The study resulted in a roadmap of 31 interlocking recommendations for government, organisations and their leaders, and for women themselves. The aim was that if each of the recommendations was addressed, more women would be participating and, importantly, progressing in corporate life in Perth, resulting in more women taking on influencing and decision-making roles.
There was a business who one of the recommendations is go and do a pay audit. So they did a pay audit. Took 2 hours to get the reporting from HR. The executive team sat down and realised that there was a 28% like-for-like pay gap, and they closed it. So within 4 hours, they had seen the problem and rectified the problem. And that had some budget implications. It certainly had some structural and communication implications as well. But they just said, now we know the inequity exists, we can't not address it.
As I got to the back end, the tangible outcome was the roadmap. And how could people take the roadmap and apply it within their own businesses, which is indeed what we did and certainly advocated for other business to do. In my own organisation, there's been material improvement in women participation at senior level, significant and material improvement. Not the least, 2 of our last 4 chief executives have been women, but indeed it's also been the chief executive men that have really pushed the agenda along. We have childcare, we've closed that gender pay equity gap. In fact, it went positive back in about 2016 for women for the first ever time, which was the outcome of a lot of work. But over the course of the next 5 years, change will really come when male leaders step up and acknowledge this as not an issue of gender, but an issue of leadership. If we approach it that way, we'll see the same outcomes as we've seen with safety.
In 2020, we're sitting here saying, well, yes, some things have changed, but some things still need to change. So by 2025, I hope we're not talking about the issue at all, that it's a sense of fairness for all.